welcome to St. Houston's Climbing Center.
Before we get started, we are going to take you through a couple of things, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
There are inherent risks that come along with climbing, so before you can climb here at SAM, we ask that you fill out one of our waivers at the front desk. It is important you read through the entire form and fully understand what you are signing. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the staff. First, we're going to go over a few rules of the gym. It's important that when you're on the safe deck, which is the padded area around the wall, that you don't have any food or drinks. And if you have any drinks, make sure that they're closed containers.
We also ask that you wear some type of shoe while walking around on the safe deck, and some type of closed-toed shoe while climbing on the wall or boulder. Basically, no bare feet.
We also ask that you keep your chalk vests to a minimum, and remember that it's a rule of rec sports that you always have to wear a shirt.
Make sure if you see any injuries at the climbing center that you report them to the staff immediately.
When you're spotting, it's important that you have a nice athletic stance. So basically you want your feet about shoulder width apart, and you have to be ready for when they fall.
We also want to make sure that we are not trying to catch our climber when they fall. Our goal is to guide them to the crash pads and to keep their head and necks away from any type of hard surface or object.
To do this, I want to keep my hands up with my elbows slightly bent to absorb the force a little easier. When it comes to our hands, we want to think spoons, not forks. With our arms and hands, we want to aim right between the shoulder blades, since this is where the center of gravity is located. This way, when the climber falls, we are able to guide them to the crash pad. The first step in our belay skills progression is putting on and checking the harness. Harness is important because it connects the climber and the belayer when on the top rope. With the harnesses used here at the SAM Climbing Center, we have 3 loops, 1 waist loop and 2 leg loops. The easiest way to put on your harness is to think of it as a pair of pants. You want to make sure that the belay loop, which is the bright blue colored loop, is in the front.
As you pull the harness up, you want to make sure that the waist loop is up and over your hips. This way, if you somehow turn upside down while climbing, you will not fall out of your harness. You will tighten the waist loop and then make sure the leg loops are snug. To make sure the harness is tight enough, you can try to wiggle the waist loop over your hips. If you cannot accomplish this, then your harness has the right fit.
The last step in putting on our harness is making sure that the out straps are double backed. Your metal buckle should look like a C. To recap, you want to make sure that the belay loop is in front, there's a snug fit, and that the buckles are double backed. If you have any questions, feel free to ask the staff.
Now that we have our harnesses on, you will need to learn to tie the figure 8 follow-through knot. This knot is readily used in climbing because it properly allows the climber to be connected into the system, and when weighted, the knot only tightens itself.
The first step is to measure out the appropriate length of tail in the rope. This is about 1 meter of rope. Next, we will fold that rope into what is called a bight. Think of it as a snowman's head. Then take the working end or tail end of your rope and wrap it around a complete turn of the bight, aka the snowman's head. Think of it as his scarf. But no snowman is complete without a carrot nose, so we will take the working end of the rope that we just wrapped and poke his nose through his head. Once we pull that through, it should create something that looks like a figure 8.
Once we have the figure 8 in place, we will then take the working end of the rope through our attachment points on the harness. We will want to go up from the bottom and through both loops that connect to the belay loop. Once we do that, I will take the same working end and follow the original figure 8 we made. Essentially, we are retracing the 8. If this seems confusing, don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to practice in a bit. After that, you will want to snug the knot down by pulling on all ends of the rope.
When we are done with the figure 8 follow-through, we will have 5 sets of rope. In other words, 10 rope strands running through our knot. We also want to make sure we have no less than a fistful and no more than 2 fistfuls of tail left at the end of our knot. And that is the figure 8 follow-through knot.
Now that our climber is in the system by being tied into the rope, we will will need someone on the other end to take slack, or extra rope. This person is called the belayer. This person will be you in just a bit.
Here at the SAM Climbing Center, we use what's called an assisted locking belay device, or commonly known as a greenery. While it has a locking mechanism in the device, it doesn't mean that we should let our guard down as belayers. It's important to have perfect form and technique while belaying. That way, when you transfer over to an aperture-style device like an ATC, it will be an easier transition. As the belayer, we will have two pieces of equipment, an assisted locking belay device and a locking carabiner. To attach ourselves to the rope, we are going to simply open up to the device and feed the rope through the device as shown in the diagrams on the device. Once we have done that, we can close the face of the device and attach it to the locking carabiner through this hole. Then we can attach the entire setup to our belay loop on our harness via the locking carabiner. Our final step will be to lock the gate by twisting the screw on the carabiner. Now we are ready to learn to belay. The belay method used here at SAM is called the PLUS method, which is an acronym that stands for pull, lock, under, and slide.
So the dominant hand is on the brake strand or working end of the rope. It pulls up, then locks off to create a bend in the rope. Then our non-dominant hand is placed under the dominant hand on the brake strand, which allows our dominant hand to slide up closer to the belay device. Then we repeat the motion of pull, lock, under, slide as our climber goes up the wall, creating slack in the rope. It is important to remember that our dominant hand should never leave or let go of the brake strand.
If our climber falls, we will immediately return to the lock position. As good belayers, this is where we will be spending a majority of our time.
If our climber is significantly heavier than us, we can clip into the floor anchors stationed throughout the climbing center. To do this, take the locking carabiner attached to the floor anchors and attach it to the belay loop in your harness. Take note not to clip it in to the other carabiner. Anchoring in will prevent me from leaving the ground if my climber falls.
It is important to check all systems involved. First, I want to check the belayer's setup.
We want to make sure the rope is fed through the assisted locking device properly and that the locking carabiner is locked down on the belay loop. If they're using a floor anchor, we want to make sure that the locking carabiner is locked as well. Lastly, we want to check their harness to make sure all of the buckles are double backed and that it is on snugly. As the belayer, I want to double check my climber.
First, we want to make sure that the knot is tied correctly. And same with the belayer, we want to make sure the harness is on correctly.
The last step of double checking is communication. Before we start, I will share some simple commands. First, I will ask my belayer if he is ready for me to belay by saying, "On belay."
Once I am ready, I will reply, "Belay is on."
I will then let them know that I am coming off the ground by saying, "Climbing,"
which I will then respond to with, "Climb on."
When we are ready to lower our climber, we will first make sure our hands are in the lock position. Then, with our non-dominant hand, we will pull back on the lever that is attached to the assisted locking device to release the locking mechanism. While holding the lever down, we can slowly let the rope slide through our dominant or brake hand. Lowering a climber is much easier when we keep our hands at our hips.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to ask the staff if you have any questions.
Have fun and climb safe.